Whoa, okay. I feel like this was the most divisive RPG of the year. Before it even released, chatter around the game was skeptical. I know I was. It didn't look like a Final Fantasy, more like a devil-may fantasy. The only things that made it look Final Fantasy were the staples like a chocobo or a Marlboro. Fast forward to the demo, which did its job and changed minds. It changed my mind. Sure, there were skeptics, but most people came around. After all, they put down 70 buckaroos for a game that was supposed to reinstate people's trust for the 36-year-old beloved franchise. So, did it? We are hit with an explosive opening. Two Eikons, Ifrit and Phoenix, are locked in battle to the death, and this is how we're introduced to our main boy, Clive, reflecting on the fierce fight. He's with a small band of soldiers, waiting for the right time to steal another kingdom's icon, Shiva. This plan gets a little messy, and we flash back to Clive's earlier years, training to be a proper shield to his younger brother and dominant of the Phoenix, Joshua. Essentially, we get to see the events that lead Clive to his present-day predicament, an enslaved soldier of the Empire. But that doesn't last long, as our resident Cid shatters Clive's shackles and presents him with freedom. Free to roam a decaying world. The Blight, a phenomenon that blackens soil, inks waters, and is slowly consuming the continent of Valisthea. In this world, people who can use magic without a magic crystal are treated as lesser beings rather than gifted. They bear a mark, symbolizing their lowly station as a bearer or slave. They use their magic to bellow fires, keep fish cold, and treat their master's injuries, all while being spat on and belittled. Dominants are those who wield icons, aka summons, and they're often used as pawns in a political game. The Hideaway is a place where bearers can live in peace as freed people. Cid's goal is to free bearers from snobby nobles and to shatter the Mothercrystals, the structures from which small, everyday crystals come from that allow normies to conjure magic. Cid has reason to believe the Mothercrystals are responsible for the Blight. Clive, having every reason to seek vengeance on those who wronged him and his family, sees new opportunity in the world. Seeing a matter that goes beyond petty vengeance unexpectedly changes the tone of our story. I really enjoy the setting of Final Fantasy XVI, a grim, realistic take on European medieval times. Sure, a backdrop that is done all too often, but I appreciated that this had more grit. It's a world where magic was so commonplace you'd see it used for everyday things. I thought that was a very strong but quiet touch. I mean, how often do we play games and only see magic as a means of attacking, but never for common everyday use? Through cutscenes, there are clear hierarchies, and we can see how each tier dresses, speaks, and is spoken to. So many small details weave together to make a beautiful tapestry of this bleak world. Then we have the people in it, such as our main character, Clive, a surprisingly mature individual who's an adult. As an adult, I always get excited seeing grown-ass characters. Clive goes through it. In his youth, he was a kind, honorable man, then shit goes down, and he's just kinda dealing. Then, after depression, he picks himself up. It's a good, believable development. I love how dynamic he is. He's brooding but not detached. He's more of a man of action than of words, and through these actions shines his care for those around him. But make no mistake, words are not beyond him either. He partakes in fun banter from time to time. He is far from a one-trick trope. I really enjoyed Clive as a main character, and I believe it's a lost art being able to make a clammed up character enjoyable. Clive meets a host of other characters, the main ones who weave in and out on our journey. Jill, childhood friend who's probably my least favorite, only because she was very melancholy, and her arc wasn't nearly as interesting or developed. It boiled down to, this guy did bad things to me, and it wasn't even like this guy was a major player. Her entire shtick fell very flat, and after her arc, her character felt just kinda there. It kinda felt like she was more of a tag-along than joining with purpose. However, scenes between her and Clive were very heartwarming. Torgal, Clive's trusty animal companion, and listen, I don't like dogs. I really thought the only dog in gaming I'd give a pass was FF6 Interceptor, but Torgal's up there, and besides, he's a wolf, so it's different. He's such a good boy. We have other characters that come in and out of the story. Cid, of course. What a robust voice he has. My god, I was not expecting that.
Clive!
He's the leader of a resistance group, and a damn good one. Gav, the Hideaway's best scout and comedic relief. He's a good man, always ready to help. and a few more you'll meet along the way. Those are some of the party members, but we also get some important NPCs that may not join Clive on the field, but they are essential members of the hideaway. Karen, this grumpy old lady with a heart of gold, who serves as the item shop owner. Blackthorn, a super smiley blacksmith. Not. He's such a grouch. Goots, the gentle giant who does occasionally meet Clive on the battlefield, but only to sell goods. Even NPCs outside the hideaway who serve as allies get a lot of love. We'll circle back to them later. Bottom line is, the cast was good, however paled in comparison to Clive, and I really do wish Jill got an equally enthralling backstory. Final Fantasy XVI most obviously takes great inspiration from Game of Thrones, considering their developers were required to watch the 8-season series. And let's just say they nailed it. The inspiration is clear. Clive is Jon Snow, Annabella Cersei, Torgal's Ghost, Akashic are White Walkers, Dion is Loras, the list goes on. Note, these aren't one-for-one comparisons, but the connections are obvious. But the big talking point is, does this feel like a Final Fantasy? Are some of the story elements there? Yes, destroying the Mothercrystals, making allies, wars in between nations, and the secret ingredient to any JRPG, the power of friendship. But while all of these elements are there, they're not necessarily potent. Now, one thing with the story is how they expanded on some parts and kept other parts minimal, specifically the politics and war of it all. Our mission is to destroy the Mothercrystals. These crystals are where small crystals come from. It would be like someone going around smashing generating facilities, effectively putting everyone in the Dark Ages again. And the aristocrats don't seem to be occupied with who is destroying the crystals. Rather, let's move to another nation and take their crystal, until it's ultimately destroyed. They don't seem to care what force is going around disrupting their way of life. And while I like the focus is on our mission, I would have liked our disruption to be noticed and taken into consideration, and the war to have more prominence. After all, we have an entire NPC dedicated to straightening out what could easily be a confusing chain of events, detailing timeline, characters, their affiliations with beautiful visuals. And even when she isn't present, I love the active time lore feature, which pulls up relevant characters and information, updating you as you progress story to remember what is what. But that's not where a lot of the controversy lies. Instead, it's packed within its gameplay, most notably the lack of a playable party and it being more action-oriented. For the most part, I enjoyed the combat. The foundation is Clive swinging his sword all fancy-like, casting balls of magic, and dodge and counter like hell. Aside from hacking away at enemies' health, they have a stun gauge. Whittle this down halfway and you'll get a partial stun. Deplete it completely and enemies are staggered until their bar refills again. This is when you go all out, unleashing your finest skills to deal massive damage. Icons. This is where we start getting more excitable. You could have 3 base icons equipped at a time. You select 2 of the icon's moves, and the base icon skill, which is exclusive to that icon. Only Phoenix can dash up to people. Rama targets and sends lightning bolts, etc. Save for unique abilities, all skills have a cooldown. Now, not only can you swap between 3 base icons, but icons' movesets aren't limited to their base icons. Meaning if Phoenix is your base icon, you can equip Titan's ability while still using Phoenix's dash. You can mix and match as long as the ability is mastered. How does that work? After battle, you gain experience in AP, ability points, which allows you to power up your skills. Mastering them will allow you to use them with other icons, and there's no penalty for resetting ability points, so try out all sorts of combinations. During battle, party members are AI controlled, and not gonna lie, they're pretty helpful. They deal decent damage, and better yet, take some of the heat off Clive. Sometimes you'll be facing hordes, but they'll split their attention. The one party member you have some control over is Torgal, sticking enemies, hurling them into the air, or healing you, although it's for a useless amount. You know what is a crime though? Putting potions and Torgal in the same menu. If you forget to switch from potions to Torgal, you'll be blowing through your consumables. While combat is flashy and satisfying, I do find it incredibly simple. In short, spam icon abilities, then do regular attacks for a bit until they recharge, rinse, and repeat. Time your dodges just right to unleash a counter, or strike an enemy the same time an enemy strikes you for a brief moment of slow motion to deal extra damage. I enjoyed the combat when I was good at it. Other times, I really wasn't feeling it. I could not for the life of me get certain enemies' timings down, which led me to getting beat up a lot. When health is low and you don't feel like popping a potion, Limit Break swoops in to save the day, priming Clive to not only deal more damage, but heal over time. Limit Break always felt good. Also, was it just me, or were regular enemies just fodder, and enemies with stun bars are the actual enemies and were damage sponges? Mere punching bags, as they weren't difficult, just tedious. And same with major bosses. I understand FF16 was going for a more cinematic approach, but after you depleted enemy health, usually a cutscene would ensue, leading up to a quick time event, and I'm very mixed because the Eikon battles were gorgeous, with incredible scale, and I absolutely wanted to watch it like a movie. In fact, many of them I rewatched on YouTube because I just wanted to be a viewer. As a player, I felt like I couldn't fully enjoy the visuals because I was staring at the center of my screen, waiting for the QTE prompt to come up, opposed to just enjoying the battle and missing the prompt. Also, my god, they were really long. While I love the interpretation of classic Final Fantasy attacks and how grand everything was, sometimes I was like, man, just let me kill the damn thing. Where combat falls short is the lack of customization. It doesn't extend to much outside of assigning Eikon abilities and equipment, and even the equipment was lacking. It was mostly, this skill does more damage, or the cooldown is faster. For example, there was no elemental weakness, something to give you an edge or a disadvantage. For fuck's sake, I killed a bomb with fire. As you defeat enemies, you gain materials for crafting, and even that was shallow. It was simply buy whatever had the highest numbers. Now in truth, I'm not much of a crafter, so I appreciated the simplicity, but it did feel like a half-assed feature. By endgame, most people would probably have the same equipment build, the only difference being those who hunt and those who don't. Hunts are quests to, you guessed it, hunt down unique monsters, which are hardly unique. They're usually just built off the base game of a regular monster and gave it a few extra attacks. They weren't very thrilling. Overall, Final Fantasy XVI is on the easier side, and I think that's because some RPG players aren't accustomed to fast, reflexive action. Granted, New Game Plus does allow for harder difficulty. Don't know why that wasn't afforded to us in the beginning, but okay. It does change what monsters appear on the field, plus raising their difficulty. Not only are there hunts, but side quests. We got two kinds. One with a plus symbol, these will grant Clive a boon, raise the effectiveness of potions, more potions, etc. Then there are the minus symbol quests, which are just help this person, and some quests do build on each other. There's an NPC you help once, and the next quest will build off that. And to be fair, the multi-part stories are interesting and I did enjoy them, so if you're a story junkie, these might be the ones for you. Plus, you get a generous amount of experience. Still, side quests I found to be hit and miss. Some did an excellent job dialing in on the tone of the world. My personal favorites are Plaything, a quest to see how a well-off child sees a bearer, and All Bark and No Bite, a quest to see truly how cruel bears have it, and I was blown away. Other side quests are straight up fetch quests, like fight a few goblins, come back with the MacGuffin, talk to this person. I think quests in the beginning felt great because it was the start of the game, you're checking things out, the world is slowly opening up to you. But then, the main story gets so good, these green side quest markers become more of a chore. After you complete a story mission, more and more of these side suckers keep popping up. And I'm just like, damn, I want to continue the story. And sure, Yoshi P wasn't holding a gun to my head to make me do these quests, but I wanted to get the full picture. So I did all the quests. And what's worse is there are some main story quests that fall into the MMO-ness of the game. Go talk to these people to get information on this missing person, then travel to find missing person. Or straight up fetch quests. Go find these missing pieces so I can build a vessel. If there is one thing Final Fantasy is known for, it's for being beautiful. Final Fantasy XVI takes a cinematic approach, events are grand and over the top and shown from different angles. It's a marvel to look at. In combat especially, I thought the scenes were epic and what a treat to watch, if you weren't interrupted by QTE prompts. Love seeing unique Final Fantasy moves, how they're implemented within combat. It was a lot of fun and certainly pushed the PlayStation 5 to its limits. Something I strongly dislike about Final Fantasy XVI is how westernized it looks. Like, damn it, I love my colored hairstyles, my glorious armors, their stylized eyes. So visually, character-wise, it didn't tickle my fancy. They had like 3.5 pretty boys. this guy, and Secret Boy. And Clive if you lost the facial hair, so half point. For me, any game that steers from realism is always more appealing to me. Granted, what they presented looks great. I love the facial expressions, small details like the characters not holding eye contact, or their movement like bumping into people or chickens, just touches of charm. NPCs, I swear, most of them look like discarded Skyrim character creations. They're all ugly. Now, for exploration's sake, it felt a bit empty sometimes. I personally enjoyed the dense areas more. Some would say hallways with multiple branching points, and I liked that. In a time where devs think the bigger the world, the better, I loved how condensed it was. In fact, I preferred dungeon areas more than the open ones, simply because there was nothing to do other than fight things and discover obelisks, which served as fast travel points, and there were chronolith trials hidden away, which just amounts to fighting waves of enemies with one icon. And sure, you could find chests with crafting materials you don't need and gold you don't spend, and sometimes you might stumble across a hunt on accident, but that was it. Nothing truly to shake up the monotony of going from point A to B. But since there isn't much to discover, I like the hallway-like dungeons. It's direct, no messing around, go fight Big Bad at the end while killing fodder along the way. My thing is, I don't mind the lack of things to explore, just don't give us these open and empty areas to make us think there's something worth exploring. Now, what ties this game together, what elevates the highs and sombers the lows are the music, done by none other than Masayoshi Soken, the composer of the critically acclaimed MMORPG Final Fantasy XIV with an expanded free trial which allows you to play through the entire... Yes, that Soken. The music in this game was incredible. I did not expect much from it, admittedly, but Soken pulled through and really ramped up each emotion of every scene. Also, riffs of the Final Fantasy theme scattered throughout various pieces was a masterful touch. The voice acting is amazing. I was thoroughly impressed, along with the writing. I do wish the lip syncing was a bit better though.
What do you want?
Fun fact, Final Fantasy XVI was designed around motion capture of the English voice actors, and Naoki Yoshida, producer of Final Fantasy XVI, encouraged everyone to play with English voices at least once. I think the battle music was some of the best in the OST. The music accompanying the Eikon fights was outstanding, and that's why Phoenix vs. Ifrit is by far my favorite soundtrack. It just set the tone, high energy, intense, on the edge of your seat, even if the gameplay for this fight was mundane. I'm a sucker for a choir in my music. This entire segment was fire. Pun intended. Final Fantasy XVI is a great game and an above-average Final Fantasy. It's an enjoyable action game with RPG elements. It does what it does relatively well, but it doesn't do anything new. It has a gritty story that could have toned down the MMO fetchy side quests and instead given us more time with characters that didn't get enough. While Final Fantasy XVI is one of my top 5 favorite Final Fantasies, it couldn't dethrone my favorites Final Fantasy IX and IV, which I reviewed here. And if you appreciate my work, please consider supporting me on Patreon. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next video. SMT5, here I come. Mwah!